It's really exciting to see so many of you come back from last year's event and a lot of new faces this year. It's great that we can have so many partners here from the UK, from France and Germany, Benelux, the Nordics, even partners from Russia, and we've got a client that's got a service based in Nigeria. So it's really a really kind of multi-territory event, and really happy you guys can all come and be here. I do want to again reflect on what Rob said earlier about the progress we've made, and even reflect back on some of the sessions we've had today looking at the Comcast experience, going from launching something in beta to taking it where it is today and some of those early results we've seen. For Erica, Marie, and Alex to talk about the roadmap and some of those great content experiences, the movie bundles, the tablet devices, the new ways we're branching out and continuing to invest in the platform. And really excited for you guys to see, you can see here the panel that's coming up after this session to talk about EST adoption and how we're marketing digital ownership to the consumer. I think that's come a long way in terms of thinking about how we're messaging this and starting to have a bit of a common voice, but also get some of the retailer perspective. And one other thing that we wanted to mention that Rob didn't cover, but if you look really closely at the new media team here based in London, you may have noticed a lot of us have beards this year where we actually didn't have them last year. So that's an area of progress or something that's changed year over year. Maybe that's actually regression, I don't know, back to caveman days, but it's a change nonetheless. Back to digital gifting. Was thinking about this, I think it was Rob Marsh, and Rob, I haven't seen you here today, maybe you are here, but there you are. Said something, I think, a little bit prophetic last year's panel, and something we want to cover this year. He said something like, if we can crack digital gifting, we'd really be onto something like that. And we completely agree with that, and it's exciting to see that the industry as a whole, there's a lot of momentum around this, and especially here in the UK, talking with the trade groups, the studios, the retailers, really putting a lot of emphasis on this topic. So I want to talk to you about three main topics when we look about this whole opportunity. First, physical gifting. There's a lot we can learn about the sort of tried and tested behavior that we've seen in physical gifting over the years, and we're going to spend some time looking at just kind of behind some of the numbers and the insights just around the ability to gift a DVD or Blu-ray and some of the historic traits there. The opportunity in digital. We're going to spend some time talking about not just film and television, but just as an industry and for retailers across all categories, what's happening in this space. Some really interesting stuff in terms of lots of retailers trying to crack this, not just in this country, but in other territories as well, and look at some of the incremental benefits that you can capture in digital that aren't there in physical. And finally, solutions. I think the key thing we want to say is here, there's lots of different approaches to this, many potential solutions. And we've talked to a lot of you over the past year about one idea and one approach that we have to try to solve this problem, but I think the overall message is there's lots of things we need to do and coming together to really try to crack in digital gifting and take advantage of that opportunity. So first, let's spend some time just on physical gifting and looking back at some of the insights we can learn here. The great thing about this, it's a proven behavior. If we look back to sort of the heyday of people buying DVDs and Blu-rays, it's a very, very consistent source of sales. So we see here in the UK, typically on average throughout the course of a year, about 25% of sales are gifts. And that's been pretty consistent throughout the years. We know this business has been challenging in recent years, and there's some challenging stats also related to gifting, but more or less, if you look back, that's been very consistent. And it's not just in the UK. If you look at the same sort of data for other markets, we put up here Germany, France, and Sweden. You see that same 20 to 30%-ish range. In the US, this number tends to be in that sort of 20 to 25% range as well. So it is something that's pretty consistent globally. Now, not too surprisingly, huge uplift during the holiday season. So we kind of see in Q4, it ends up being 35%, then over the Christmas holiday, over 50% of sales can be directly gifts. So that gives you an idea just how big this is and how consistent it's been and how broad it is across territories. But it's what's really interesting if you put this in terms of raw numbers. And again, you have to consider if you look back at 2008 when DVDs were incredibly popular, and this is something that lots of people did, but in raw numbers, an estimated 50 million DVD gifts in the UK. That's a huge number. And again, you can take that with a pinch of salt in terms of at that time how popular this was, but that's a big number in terms of numbers of gifts. Putting that in context of per capita, if you think there's at that time, about 60 million people in the UK, that's quite high. In fact, that's quite a bit higher, 50 to 60% higher than even the US, if you look on a per capita basis. So I think that's a really important indicator, and we think about Yes, we all know the trends, but at one point in time, that many DVDs were given as gifts. People thought of that as a good gift, wanting to share a great film, a great TV series. These are all things we want to capture and continue to build on and bring forward. So now if we look a little bit more kind of the next step, how are people gifting these? When are people gifting a physical piece of content? The biggest thing that stands out is the vast majority, 7 in 10, are planned. And that's in contrast to what we look at as an impulse purchase. The vast majority of gifts are planned on the physical side. What's very linked to that is it tends to be very occasion-based. So those annual things that come up year after year, the two most reliable being birthdays and the holiday season. Clearly Christmas are the two biggest ones. But we also see, rounding out the top 5, things like Father's Day, Mother's Day, and Valentine's Day. Those types of occasions that people are thinking ahead and planning, these tend to be where physical gifting lands on average for the most part. And again, on average, what we see from our research we looked at, the purchasers tend to be a little bit more older, a little bit more affluent families, but as we're going to talk about next, it's a much broader audience than I think people will give it credit for. But that shows you a little bit about just the scale and some of the traits behind physical gifting historically. And I think we want to look at it again, that some of that, in my mind, a misperception that what we hear a lot anecdotally is, well, I'm just going to buy a DVD, it's just for the kids. I have 3 kids, I can attest to the fact that they watch DVDs over and over and over again. I can certainly appreciate that, but in looking at some of the data, it's more than just kids. Cantor actually shared this data quite recently at a presentation I thought was really interesting to make sure we kind of reshare it. But 80% of the spend is actually coming from consumers without children in their household. So just to be clear, it's not all just parents buying gifts for their kids, although as much as we love that, it's not completely reliant on that. 40% of the gifts are for people over 45, 40% under 25. So we wanted to share this just to, again, as an indicator. When we think about moving forward and the opportunity in gifting, it's a lot broader than I think people give it credit for. So if we summarize, a huge percentage of DVDs and Blu-rays have been gifts. It tends to be more planned, more occasion-based. It's a fairly broad audience. I think those are all good things we want to build upon. But the question we always ask and think about is, well, do people still want to gift? Is giving a piece of content and sharing that content still top of mind? Is that of interest to people? Is the motivation still there? I mean, for me personally, I feel like it is, but we've got some data that I think backs it up as well. So the motivation to gift remains strong. This is what we believe in, and we believe some of the data backs this up. Again, a piece of research that came from the industry trust here. 65% of people enjoy giving physical gifts, but only half have done so in the past year. So to me, that says a lot. And there's a big kind of raw number of shopper opportunities here in the UK when you look at that number, but it speaks to the fact that despite the trends we see in the industry, some of those challenging trends, lots of people are thinking about and want to share video as a gift, but not as many people are doing it as we hoped would. Overall, in summary, we want to take that, we want to sort of build upon all this, and it's a good time to transition to what is the opportunity in digital. This next section here, we're going to talk about not just for film and TV, what is the opportunity, but thinking about the general space and what are retailers doing in different markets, different categories, because there is a lot of interesting activity here. But I think for us, when we at NBC have been talking about this opportunity overall, it tends to come back to scenarios, moments, times where you think about giving a gift digitally, but really don't have the tools to do so, or haven't been able to eliminate some of that friction that would allow you to fulfill that opportunity when those scenarios happen. So we want to show you 3 examples, just to kind of get you thinking about the vision for what we think can happen. The key for me, it's not about a gift, it's an everyday treat. And this is just a little quirky example of, you're out to lunch with a friend, this happens all the time. Wait, you haven't seen Goodfellas? Here, let me take out my phone, with a couple clicks, I'm going to give it to you. So this is an example, again, where those impulsive moments, you want to be able to act on that with a really handy way to do so. I feel like this comes up all the time. Again, we picked the scenario where you're out to lunch with a friend, but just in the office or talking with somebody, especially being someone in their 40s, working with a lot of people in their 30s and 20s, and people that maybe haven't seen Goodfellas or heard of Goodfellas or heard of Fletch or all my old crazy kooky 80s movies. I want to be able to share that content with them. I want to be able to, and more than happy to spend the money to give them more of that everyday treat. It doesn't have to be an occasion, it doesn't have to be their birthday. We want to really capture these types of moments that are happening throughout the day. Here's just another example, again, just to think you about those times and those moments when you may want to give something. Maybe you just watched a great film, you're at home, you say here, hey Rob, I just watched Deadpool, I'd love for you to have this one's on me, click, 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 boom, I've just sent it to you. That instant gratification of knowing that I like something and I just thought of the person I know who would actually love that piece of content, and I'm going to share it with them. And the last one is something we're going to talk about more, but it's initiating something through a text conversation. So here, someone's just been dumped, I'm heartbroken, I've got the perfect thing for you. He's just not that into you. So these pick-me-up gifts, the just because gifts, is the real opportunity here to build upon, again, what we saw in physical and add to it these situations, again, where you're probably not going to think to go buy a DVD and send it to somebody. But if you were in a text message conversation and we're easy to do this, we think this is a really interesting thing. So again, just some scenarios. There's probably dozens of these we can come up with, but just get you thinking about it. Now, what's really important here is that we can step back and not just think about TV and film, but digital gifting and even treating is really happening in a big way in certain parts of the world, and we're going to talk about that. First thing you see here is actually a WeChat implementation. So Starbucks did a deal with Tencent where you can gift a Starbucks coffee to someone, but that doesn't even really tell the story. When you look at markets like Japan, China, and South Korea, you have huge messaging platforms like Line, Kakao, and WeChat, where this is happening in a big way on mass scale. And it's all being initiated through messaging. It's not through some other app or a website, it's through those messaging conversations, and people are gifting all types of things, whether it's food or other physical items, but it's happening on a daily basis and more of that treating activity. If you look at a really, really extreme example, if you look at WeChat, the red envelope is a really, really kind of cultural phenomenon there where people are giving monetary gifts over the Chinese New Year. And that was something that was done physically for many, many years. And it's been successfully migrated to a digital phenomenon where we just saw a number that there were 46 billion virtual red envelopes delivered through WeChat. And that was up about 50% over last year. So what it's showing you is this behavior can be translated, but also there's a lot of new behavior happening, not just something that's taking, but also these new everyday treats that are happening in these platforms. So proven it can happen in a big way, and it's being done in certain markets. Just a couple of other examples to share. I mean, there was quite a few in terms of retailers experimenting with this, but just a couple of things to kind of give you some idea of what we're seeing out there. PayPal, who everybody knows clearly, is starting to dabble a little bit more specifically in a digital gift. So they have some Jonathan Adler designed, customized gift cards that you can send to people with different themes. So just making it a little bit more fun, a little bit more personalized to send money to someone in a much more special way. So that was interesting. And just an example here is Sephora, and there's some other brands that are doing this. They have some ways you can personalize your e-gift card, whether that's uploading a video, adding a personalized message. You can redeem it anywhere. Quite a few examples of brands that are trying to do this. Starbucks, even Dunkin' Donuts has been written up a lot for some of the cool things they're doing with gifting donuts on an e-gifting basis. So it's really encouraging to see, if you even step back from film and television, what's happening in this space. And there's no doubt, again, sort of back to Rob Marsh's point, that people are trying to crack this and trying to figure out the way to unlock this activity in digital, but really in a mobile-first way. So it's just a recap again, initiating through messaging. We're seeing mass adoption of this, and it's a lot more of the just because gifting. It doesn't have to be occasion-based. So let's not forget about the good old-fashioned gift card. There's a lot we can learn from what's happening in this industry, and just kind of always blows my mind about how big this industry is. In the UK here, it's about a £6 billion industry. In the US, depending on the numbers you look at, it's anywhere from $100 to $150 billion industry. And I think we saw a number that about $50 billion of credit is loaded onto gift cards over just the holiday season. So those numbers still blow me away. The average spend on a gift card is about £26. And what's interesting is that is one that's a pretty healthy number, and we start to think about gifting a film or a box set, that's handy to know. But also that's slightly above the average that people spend on a non-gift card gift. So they're spending a little bit more on a gift card than they would on a typical gift, according to the research we've seen. But these next two stats are a little bit more what we can leverage into the possible digital opportunity that we thought were really interesting. One is that about 6 in 10 people are saying that personalization is appealing. And again, this is just talking about a physical gift card. Making it more interesting than just grabbing something off a rack and giving it to somebody. How can we personalize that? A lot of people are looking for that and demanding more. Now they know that these capabilities are there with a mobile device and whatnot. They want personalization even on physical gift cards. And finally, 60% of people are introduced to a new brand through a gift card. And of those, about 20% are becoming regular users. That's the stat that really gets us excited. If we start to think about the opportunity and why we're doing this to grow EST adoption ultimately, if we could get 15, 20, 25% of people who are given a digital gift as a film to become users of iTunes, of Amazon, of Google Play, of Sky Store, TalkTalk, Wacky, Microsoft, Sony, BBC Store, Pavel, I think I left somebody out. That's what's really exciting. They become adopters of EST, become gifters themselves. So we want to capture all these learnings and translate them to what do we do in digital. So a quick recap. On the physical side, planned and occasion-based. Again, those aren't bad things. Those are great things. We want to capture them and figure out how we leverage them into digital. For digital gifting, much more impulse. Something that's going to be done anytime, anywhere. A 365 opportunity. Doesn't have to be an annual holiday. There's reasons to gift every single day. And we can really think about it in a mobile-first environment. So if we can, again, capture all these triggers into why people gift, I think we'll really have something. So now on to solutions. And if we just pause here for a second, I think it's good to acknowledge that there's a lot of good news happening with the space. I mentioned it when I first started the presentation here. Speaking at least from the UK perspective, we've had some great meetings and a lot of momentum bringing together the studios, the retailers, and again, not even just in film and TV, but in music as well, trying to figure out what are some solutions to crack this. Short-term solutions, long-term strategic solutions, lots of things and lots of approaches what we could do here if we work together to try to figure this out. So as we're going to start to show you, diving into one approach, we just want to emphasize that it's only just one, and we're obviously open to lots of different angles and different perspectives on this, but excited to share with you one idea here. And that's on one side, bringing together all studio content, all retailers, the ability to redeem on any of those stores I just whizzed through, certainly available on all devices. And what sits in the middle of that is something that we're calling Unwrapped. And many of you we've been sharing this with over the past year or so, and it's an initiative that we're really excited about. It's a service that brings all this together. And I also want to emphasize, we're going to show you some screenshots of the product and walk you through the user experience, but really want to emphasize what we're going to show you is really all about the vision. It's really just to share that the vision is all-inclusive. It works best when you have all these parties working together, all content, all redeem on any studio, redeem on any store, and Unwrapped sort of sits in the middle of all that as a gifting service. So I want to step back. I'm going to play a little video that gives you a little bit more of the vision about Unwrapped. And this is one of our early taglines, sort of love film, love gifting. So that's Unwrapped, and again, just to sort of get you thinking about the vision of how fun the service can be. One thing I do want to clarify what Unwrapped is and what it is not. It's a gifting service. It's meant to be fun, personalized, flexible. It's not another EST store. You don't build a collection on Unwrapped. You don't play back films on Unwrapped. We have a lot of great EST retailers. This is a gifting service. It's a pass-through. It's a launching pad to those existing stores. we just want to be really clear about that's what the vision is. So we're going to take you a little bit further into some of the user flow, how you build a gift, what's the overall kind of proposition for the product. So a downloadable gift with a personal touch, and that's a little bit of a precursor to some of the things we're going to talk about in the panel and Hamish's presentation about some of the wording and messaging we need to resonate to people to understand what a digital gifting service is all about. Because we have that added challenge of, we know a lot of people aren't engaging with digital ownership today, so now we've got to get them to engage in digital gifting, which is another challenge. So the first and at a most basic level, gift any film or top TV box set. And that's what we're thinking about as our initial sort of go-to-market proposition. Now we do get asked a lot, well, could you gift an episode? Can you gift a season? We've even asked a lot, well, could you gift a rental? And these are all things that we're thinking about, especially when you start to think about price point and getting back to that digital treating, those everyday treats. How do we make it really easy for price not to be an obstacle? But anyway, but gifting any film or TV box set, that's our initial proposition. And what's really critical is the recipient chooses where to redeem. They have to have the flexibility, no matter what store they're loyal to or wherever's convenient for them. Once they receive that notification, they get to pick where they want to put that title, any store that they want. Now you can see here a bit about the personalization, and this really has to shine. And we're going to, again, talk a little bit more about some of the options here and what you can do. But we want to make sure that those two pass. We talk so much about those examples, those impulse opportunities, out to lunch with a friend, sitting on the sofa, you're in a text message conversation. If you don't want to dive into creating really fun wrappers or uploading a video, we want you to be able to have that 3-click, I sent the gift. So both journeys are really important here, and we'll have the flexibility to do both. In terms of pricing, I think the one thing we want to say is that we're going to be looking at sort of what the average market price is across the existing retailers, and Unwrap will have a slight premium to that. The feeling is there, obviously we need to have a somewhat of a viable business model for this proposition, and you're not buying for yourself, you are buying a gift. And we believe anyway, people will be willing to pay a little bit of a premium when in terms of giving a fun, personalized gift that we're going to deliver to your friend for you. And very importantly, the gift can be swapped. Now, we know that some of the maybe pushback we've had or feedback we've had as well, there's gift cards out there today. There's lots of ways that you could potentially give someone a digital piece of content through a value-based gift. And also you have that sort of no fear if the person already has that gift and it can be swapped, that they can choose what they want. In our proposition, the gift can be swapped. In some of the early testing we've done, this is hugely critical to make sure that, oh, did this person already see it in the theaters? Have they already bought it? Is it on Netflix? It has to be swappable to sort of eliminate that friction of the person who's giving the gift. Don't worry, it's up to your friend. They can swap it. They can put it in any store they want. So we want to take away all those potential paths to not gift. So now we're going to show you here a little bit about that creating the gift and how fun and flexible and personal it can be. So you can see in this example here, who is your gift for? So you pick Kelly. It's from Dot. And what's the occasion? And this one we happen to choose its birthday. But the key is you can actually start your gift in lots of different ways. If you know the piece of content you want to give, if you know the recipient, if you want to just toggle through all the fun wrappers and props and interesting things we can do in terms of leveraging studio IP, you can start the gift any way you want and come up with ideas in lots of different ways. So you're starting to build your gift from Kelly. You can pay now or save for later and come back to it if you sort of want to just kind of save where you are and come back to it later. Now you can start to see about how you personalize your gift. We're going to give you lots of shortcuts if you don't really have any ideas, or we can show you some existing experiences that have already been built. It's very flexible. You can do a little or a lot. It's up to you. We want to give you both paths to do it as you see fit. Uploading video from social media. We don't want to recreate the wheel. We know there's great platforms out there like Snapchat where people are using on a regular basis and doing some really fun, creative things with face swaps and props and AR type experiences. And when you start to, instead of doing dog noses and cat ears, and start thinking about leveraging our IP and something with Minions, or again, thinking about all the studios getting behind this, this is where, to us, this can get really exciting. How can you create a great gift from the characters to sing and send that to your friend and not just do a kind of a more basic video, but lots of ideas we're looking at for that as well. How do you send the gift? Lots of options there too. You can still do the classic email and putting your friend's email address, and Unwrapped will send a nicely packaged email to your friend. But we think a lot of people will be interested in sending through a messaging platform. So we want to have that nice deep link or grab a magic link and send it through Facebook Messenger, iMessage, WhatsApp, any of the major platforms being used. We think that's going to be a hugely popular way. People will want to just communicate the gift directly and in a really, really fast way. And then pay and go, and your gift is done. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about this. You send a gift, and instantaneously someone can get it, redeem it, and actually potentially even start enjoying it and playing it out relatively quickly. There's not many gifts out there that have that sort of same dynamic, which is, I think, really interesting. And now to show you some really fun stuff where, if you think about how creative you can get with the unwrapping experience and taking this to a couple different levels. One is thinking about Studio IP, what you could do, taking some of the different types of content and layering on different reveals that are more appropriate to that type of gift. So I'm going to show you a couple of these. If we can switch over to, there we go. So the first one here, some fun sort of balloon popping. Bridget Jones's gift is revealed. And again, to emphasize, we built this in a really, really scalable way. That these are just concepts and prototypes, but can be taken in hundreds of different directions. We could have third parties building gifts and illustrators coming in, and lots of ways we can sort of go and make it super creative and really just open this up. And this one's a more kind of real transition from physically opening wrapping paper to digitally opening it. So we want to make sure we at least have one option there, and using the wonderful things you can do on a mobile device and to actually pull the paper open with your finger and that gift coming forward and being revealed. And then lastly, here's another one, kind of got this ice theme, and behind it, you swipe all the ice away and you have Huntsman's Windsor War. Again, sort of fits to the feel of that particular film, but you sort of get the idea of what we can do with these, make it really fun for the buyer and for the receiver of the gift. We're building this experience off a couple of things when we think about potential solutions. Two things. One, we have to acknowledge that Apple's been out there with the first to step up and have a product that you can digitally gift a very specific piece of content to a friend, including through a mobile device, and that's redeemable in the iOS ecosystem. Also, Sony, about 3 years ago, launched a very innovative gifting service that can do a lot of the things we're showing you here today. So lots of great work that's already been done. We're just looking to build upon that even further. So gifting and it being a two-way experience. I think one of the things we thought a lot about as we built this product is, don't just think about the recipient, it's as much about the buyer. And we're going to show you in some of the research that we've done to try to validate this proposition, we need to be thinking about this as well. And how do we make this very reciprocal, very, very two-way, and taking advantage of what you can do in digital that you can't do in physical. So the first thing you see on the left here is sort of a concept of a thank you. So love your gift from Dot. Say thank you. Send her a gift back. Lots of things we can do to prompt and keep that engagement going. When you think about the potential viral nature of gifting, as you send one gift, it could certainly lead to another gift. We've seen some evidence of that working with other gifting services. It's absolutely something that we can play on here to really grow this. So really engaging, thank you, and return the favor options to spur on that activity. Now for the recipient, what can we do in a digital and a mobile type of platform that's really interesting? What sort of notifications can we give somebody? How can we build anticipation? Maybe you send someone a gift, but they can't open it for a week. But they get that notification, I just got a gift from somebody. Now I'm going to be thinking, what is that gift? And I've got sort of a whole week to think about it. Again, things that you can't really do on the physical side, but we can take advantage of the mobile platforms to really make this super fun. Track your gift. Again, thinking about the buyer and wanting to know that that person got the gift. They opened the gift. They redeemed the gift. They enjoyed the gift. You got a thank you message. We all know that when you send something off to somebody, you do want to know that that person got it. You can't see the reaction in their face, but it gives you that sort of gratification knowing that they got it, and sort of that back channel feeding back to the actual buyer of the gift is really important to really nail in this product experience. We did want to validate that we think there is real demand for a product like this, and also get some information that would help shape our roadmap. What sort of features do we have to focus on for something like this to actually work? So the first thing that wasn't too surprising is that when we asked people, not that many are using available options today, and that's partially a reflection of the fact that there's a fairly limited adoption of EST overall. So when we look at digital gifting, not too surprising that it's going to be a fairly low number today. But what was super encouraging is that when we showed people a very early, basically a wireframe of a concept of a dedicated gifting service, 53% were very or somewhat likely to use a service like that. So that was good. Some other key things that we found in the research, things that we've been talking about already, people would use it as an everyday pick-me-up gift. I think a couple of examples I remember was like, my nephew passed their driving test. I want to give him a little gift, just a little kind of just because gift. The personalization has to shine. A lot of people said, I'm not so sure about giving somebody a code for a birthday gift. How do we package this up to make it really feel personalized, something that you showed, you put some effort into? That's what we need to sort of migrate some of these customers and get them to be really comfortable with giving a digital gift, potentially for a big occasion, other than just those just because gifts. And what we just talked about, it does have to be two-way. I want to see their reaction. We know that the beauty of giving somebody a physical gift, any physical gift, it's tangible. They can unwrap it, they can hold it in their hands. And we have to be really smart about how we replicate that in digital with that two-way experience, those thank yous, that prompting, and making sure it's fun for the buyer and for the recipient. Just some other research some quotes we thought we'd share directly that people said without any prompt. I'd consider buying a film or TV series if I could gift into someone else's digital account. I mean, that pretty much says exactly by more or less the premise of what we're trying to do with Unwrapped. And we also thought this was interesting. It's not necessarily about digital, but you talk about adding merchandise to a gift. This gets us thinking about what the roadmap could look like in later phases. If you send someone a digital gift, but accompany that with a plush toy or a piece of merchandise for the film they love, there's a couple of stats we've seen that would really ramp up the interest in giving a gift if you could attach a piece of merchandise with it. So these are all things we're kind of collecting and putting on our queue for the roadmap. But the other thing we wanted to share is we do really think there's a good business case for this. We wouldn't be doing this and investing in this if we didn't think there was upside as an industry in terms of adding more buys and more EST adoption. So based on the model that we've done, which of course we feel is very reasonable, but we'll explain why, we think there could be an incremental 10+ million EST transactions in 2021 in the UK in that year. And here's why we think that's reasonable. Even if we had 10 million transactions in that year, that's still only about 13 or 14% of what we think would be the total EST buys in that year. And if you think about that 25% of sales on the physical side today, putting that in context, it doesn't seem incredibly out of whack. And if you think about that, the impact on the industry as a whole, 10 million transactions, that's the equivalent of putting essentially another 40 blockbuster titles into the market across all studios, across all retailers in a year. So this could be huge. We really believe, and that's just the UK. And so we think this is an opportunity that we should continue to focus on because we feel like we can capture a lot of incremental gifting activity, but also that gifting activity will lead to people who are adopting just plain old EST for the first time, and that's part of how we built up this model. And the last thing we want to leave you with is a little bit of a trajectory in how we're thinking about the progression of the product over time. There's a couple points to make here. First is it can't all be about a destination. What we mean by that, we're certainly aware of launching any new brand, any new service, anything direct to consumer now is incredibly challenging. We do have a hefty amount of marketing that we plan to put behind this, but even so, we have to do something that's very scalable and something that we can syndicate broadly. We have to be able to go where users are, or for lack of a better word, fish where the fish are. So that's when we talk about embeddable buttons, white label opportunities. How can we work with the retailers and leverage the existing user base and traffic that they have? How can we be on other types of retail experiences and allow people to gift a film from a grocer's website? Lots of things we can do. We have to be able to initiate gifting through messaging services. So we've got all the logos you'd expect up there. How can we leverage Facebook notifications, see all of upcoming birthdays, and be able to go ahead and plan a bunch of gifts that way? We can't completely rely on people coming to a great website and a great brand as a destination. It has to be achieved and reached in many different places. And again, please don't view this as a linear progression. It's just sort of showing you over time some of the things we're thinking about. And as we go further into the future, things like group gifting, bundling potentially a physical gift or a piece of merchandise with it. And hey, if this is wildly successful, who knows, could we do other things with gifting, non-TV and non-film? Also to point out, territory expansion. As we mentioned there, our goal is to launch Unwrapped in Q4 of this year, but absolutely this is something that we want to scale to other territories, including the US, but also France, Germany, the Nordics, other parts of Europe, and certainly over time, if we showed you what's happening in some of those Asian territories, we'd be crazy certainly not to look at capturing some of the value there as well. So, but the UK is our first market. That's the market we want to prove this in. We think it's a great market, a very competitive EST market, and I think showing you some of those stats, a great sort of pent-up demand, and people who historically did like giving DVDs and Blu-rays on a pretty big scale. So thanks for your time, and we're really excited about this. We'd love to take your questions, and again, just really want to emphasize, I think as an industry, lots of good things happening. We want to keep that momentum going and work with everybody here on trying to solve digital gifting. Thank you.
Hi, Brandon. Can I just ask, in terms of the research that you did, who were the recipients? What was the demographic of the people that you spoke to?
We actually did quite a broad range. I think a representative example of the UK population. We did some quantitative and qualitative research. And again, just what I tried to point out was that it wasn't like they saw this beautiful, nice-looking user flow of a gifting service of personalization. It was quite conceptual. But yeah, we looked at all different age groups. And actually we found that it was a lot more broader than we thought. We thought it would be a little more heavily leaned towards parents buying for kids and things like that. But actually what we saw in digital, and this is what our research told us, it was a broader potential buyers and sellers of gifting versus physical. And that was interesting to us as well. So again, we thought digital can be in a lot of ways incremental to what we see in physical. But to answer your direct question, it was a kind of a representative example of the whole UK population.
What's the potential for users to swap and exchange gifts, outside of the ecosystem? So what are the thoughts that you've had around, people taking gift codes and like putting them on eBay and things like that? Is that something we can expect to see here?
The reason why you have to have the ability to swap a gift is because you don't want to have people not gifting because of, Alex has probably seen this movie already, or I'm not really sure what to do, and then suddenly you back away and you exit out of Unwrapped and you never come back again. We want to make sure that friction is eliminated. But the goal of all this is to drive adoption. We want people to gift. We want people to become, to be sending gifts around, and those people, potentially a lot of them being first-time users of EST. We're expecting a lot of people to get a gift from Unwrapped and have never opened an account with any of those retailers that I mentioned before. And this might be the first time they're ever doing it. So we just want to make sure that that recipient has the flexibility, has a good consumer experience of, unfortunately, I've seen this movie, but I'm going to go ahead and swap it for something else. So we really do want to keep that within the Unwrapped kind of ecosystem of our partner retailers once we have them. So I think that will be the goal, to try to make sure that a gift is successfully redeemed, and also give them lots of prompts. If they don't redeem it in the first day, in the first week, in the first month, we want to give lots of reminders to both the buyer of the gift and the recipient. Hey, we just noticed you've got the gift, you haven't redeemed it yet, and make sure there's a robust way to swap it out. There's a lot of intricacies around the swapping of a gift because you could potentially have different studios and different price points when we're working through all that. But at a high level, we need a way to swap the gift successfully, but so that we want it to be swapped within Unwrapped.
I think we're really excited to show you this today, which is an idea that we've had, and we're obviously have been working very hard on it. But I think Brandon alluded to this before, that this is not what we see as the only solution to gifting. And if there were 5 competitive services that were launched, that would be fantastic. If the in-retailer gifting solution that exists already, as Brandon mentioned, on some retailers, but if every retailer had their own gifting solution, also fantastic. I think we're all about sort of just growing gifting in general, and this is one way to hopefully do that. But we're certainly not wedded to everything being about Unwrapped. We would love this. It's kind of weird when you're launching something to say you would love competition, but actually we would welcome that because we think this is a really important step in growing EST in general.
Thank you very much, Brandon.
Thanks.
Brilliant.